Imagine making $420 million in a single week. Now imagine doing it illegally, while being hunted by governments, and leaving a trail of blood and chaos in your wake. This isn't fiction, this is the real story of Pablo Escobar, the man who built a drug empire so powerful, it changed the world forever. But here's the thing, Pablo wasn't just a criminal. He was a paradox. A man who could order the murder of hundreds without blinking, yet build schools and homes for the poor. A billionaire who lived in luxury, yet spent years on the run, hiding in the jungles of Colombia. So, how did a boy from a small Colombian town become one of the most feared and wealthy criminals in history? What drove him to such extremes? And what led to his shocking downfall? Buckle up, because this is a story you won't forget. Pablo Emilio Escobar was born on December 1, 1949, in Rio Negro, Colombia. He grew up in Medellín, a city that would later become synonymous with his name. But Pablo didn't start as a kingpin. He came from a modest family. His father was a farmer, and his mother was a school teacher. Even as a kid, Pablo showed signs of ambition, and a knack for breaking the rules. He started his criminal career small, stealing tombstones, sanding off the names, and reselling them. Later, he moved on to stealing cars and selling counterfeit lottery tickets. But it wasn't until he discovered the drug trade that his life took a dramatic turn. In the 1970s, cocaine was becoming the drug of choice for the wealthy and powerful in the United States. Pablo saw an opportunity and seized it. Here's an interesting tidbit, Pablo's first big break came when he partnered with a smuggler named Alvaro Prieto. Together, they started trafficking cocaine to the US via small planes. But Pablo wasn't content with being a small-time player. He had bigger plans, much bigger. By the late 1970s, Pablo had formed the Medellín Cartel, a drug trafficking organization that would dominate the global cocaine trade. The cartel's operations were ruthless and efficient. They bribed officials, intimidated rivals, and used violence to eliminate anyone who stood in their way. At its peak, the Medellín Cartel was smuggling tons of cocaine into the US every month. Pablo's wealth grew exponentially. He was making so much money that he reportedly spent $2,500 a month just on rubber bands to wrap his stacks of cash. But with great power came great danger, and Pablo's empire was built on blood. He once said, "All empires are built on blood." And for Pablo, that statement would become chillingly true. Fun fact, Pablo once burned $2 million in cash just to keep his daughter warm while they were on the run. That's the kind of absurd wealth we're talking about. By the mid-1980s, Pablo Escobar was one of the richest men in the world, with an estimated net worth of $30 billion. He lived like a king, owning luxury homes, private planes, and even a zoo. But Pablo wasn't just a criminal, he was a master of public relations. In Colombia, he portrayed himself as a modern-day Robin Hood. He built houses, schools, and soccer fields for the poor, earning their loyalty and admiration. For to many, he was a hero. But behind the scenes, he was a ruthless killer. Pablo's cartel was responsible for thousands of deaths. Judges, police officers, journalists, and even innocent civilians were murdered if they opposed him. His reign of terror was so widespread that Colombia became one of the most dangerous places on earth. Here's a chilling example, Pablo once offered to pay off Colombia's national debt, $10 billion in exchange for the government dropping his extradition charges. When they refused, he declared war. Pablo's violence reached new heights in the 1980s. When the Colombian government agreed to extradite drug traffickers to the US, Pablo declared war. His slogan was simple, better a grave in Colombia than a jail cell in the US. In 1985, his cartel stormed Colombia's Supreme Court, taking judges hostage and burning evidence. Over 100 people died in the attack. But perhaps the most shocking act of violence was the bombing of Avianca Flight 203 in 1989. The plane was blown up mid-air, killing all 107 people on board. The target? A presidential candidate who had vowed to extradite Pablo to the US. The candidate wasn't even on the plane, but Pablo's message was clear, cross him, and you pay the price. By this point, Pablo wasn't just a drug lord, he was a terrorist. And the world was watching. Pablo's empire began to crumble in the early 1990s. The US and Colombian governments were determined to bring him down. They formed a special task force, and with the help of rival cartels and Pablo's own associates, they closed in on him. Pablo went on the run, hiding in the jungles and mountains of Colombia. But even in hiding, he continued to control his empire. He built luxurious hideouts, complete with jacuzzis and satellite TVs, while evading capture for years. Finally, in 1993, the manhunt came to an end. On December 2, Pablo Escobar was cornered on a rooftop in Medellín. After a fierce shootout, he was killed by Colombian police. He was 44 years old. But here's the twist: some believe Pablo actually took his own life to avoid being captured alive. Either way, his death marked the end of an era. Pablo Escobar's death marked the end of an era, but his legacy lives on. In Colombia, he's still a polarizing figure. To some, he's a criminal who brought violence and destruction. To others, he's a folk hero who fought against inequality and foreign interference. Globally, his story has inspired countless books, movies, and TV shows, like Narcos. But beyond the glamour, his life serves as a cautionary tale. Pablo's rise and fall show the devastating consequences of greed, power, and unchecked ambition. Today, Colombia is still recovering from the damage caused by the drug trade. And while Pablo is gone, the global demand for cocaine ensures that his story is far from over. So, what do you think? Was Pablo Escobar a criminal mastermind, a product of his environment, or something else entirely? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this story as fascinating as I did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into history's most intriguing figures. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.